Okay, hello everyone. Let me get the stream going today. I'm snowed in, so I thought I would do some coding since I can't go anywhere in the world. And today I've been having an itch that I wanted to scratch here for a little while, and I'll go over exactly what the plan is for today, and then we'll get into some code. But let me just share this and get this out onto the socials, and I would appreciate if you did the same if you're joining. And let me share this on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been a pretty popular place for me lately. And we'll get going here shortly. Come join live stream as I work on incorporating rich tables into my pyATS code. We will be exploring Yang Suite, Yang Walls, RESTCONF, REST Connector, pyATS, as well as rich tables. See you on YouTube. Streaming, network automation, pyATS, Yang, RESTCONF, rich. Alright, that should do it. Let's get going. Okay, so today we have this topology. I like using this CML sandbox, by the way. So if you go into the DevNet sandboxes, you can look up CML. And I like this because it gives me a nice ready-made topology. And I'm using the Enterprise Networking Labs. I already have it reserved. And I'm running it. If I go to my sandbox labs, I'm already running this CML sandbox. Now inside the CML, we get 2 XE devices and 2 NXOS devices. Hey, Steven, thanks for joining, man. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Just getting started. You haven't missed anything yet? Just setting the stage for what I'm going to be working on. So we've got a couple of routers, couple of switches. And the first thing I do, right, is console into them through the CML and make sure they've all initiated properly. I add them to my local hosts file so that I can resolve their IPs to their host names. And then on these distribution routers, I've enabled netconf. And if you go to my README file, it tells you how to do all this stuff. You could do this right now along with me. We have to do IP HTTP secure server and then RESTCONF. Give it a couple minutes and then RESTCONF will be enabled. So what am I doing today? Well, I've wanted to do this for a while now. The pyATS examples show you Tabluate, which is wonderful because it adds tables to your logs and they look wonderful in the log viewer. But I've wanted to for a while now switch to rich tables. So that's what I've started to do. And I thought for speed and elegance and performance, what we're going to use is pyATS and the REST connector. So if we go to the README file, there's a couple things we have to pip install here now to make this work. Pip install pyATS full, pip install rich, and pip install REST connector. Now my testbed file, I have the 2 iOS XE devices in here, but under connections, you can see I say REST, not CLI or SSH or anything. So I'm using the class of REST connector REST, and that, when you look at my code, let me actually draw the line here for you. And let me .get. So you can see here, when I actually want to get the JSON payload from RESTCONF and the API, what I'm saying is self.device.rest. You can see here I have the .rest.get. And it will use this REST connectors .get against the path to the OpenConfig interfaces API. Now, where do I find this API? I'm going to go a little off the cuff here and launch a tool. Hopefully I can make this work, and I have to turn on my Docker desktop. And this is a really good tool that you're going to really start to, I believe you should start using, called Yang Suite. And I just have to get my Docker desktop running because we're going to run this as a Docker desktop. So I've already git cloned, and if we do an ls, there is a Docker folder and there is a docker compose.yaml file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say docker compose up, and it will bring up the Yang Suite. Again, you git clone it and you have that. Now I've already set it up. There is a setup script that you need to run ahead of time. But now that I have it running, if I go to localhost 80, there's an 8443, excuse me. I'm in the Yang Suite. So what I would need to do in this case, and hopefully we can do this properly, is go to device profiles, and let me delete this one. And we're going to create a new device, and we're going to call this distrouter01. This is distrouter01, 10.10.2175, Cisco. And what we want is the netconf, the RESTCONF, and let's skip the SSH validation key and the SSH. Now really what we want is the RESTCONF. So technically I don't need the netconf. Let's not get netconf for SSH. And we're going to check connectivity. And hopefully this doesn't take very long. We're going to create that profile. RESTCONF is good. So I'm going to create this profile. And what we're going to do is create a default repository in Yang set. And this was a little unplanned. I just want to show you, okay, we've turned HTTP 404. Why? Okay, so here we go. I can read it. So if I find that OpenConfig, right, interfaces, sorry, this might be a better view. OpenConfig. Let me just quickly reference what am I actually using here. OpenConfig interfaces. Well, anyhow, I didn't really plan on exploring Yang Suite today, and mine doesn't seem to be. No way I can't pull that profile here. Anyway, you can explore that Yang Suite on the device and actually get the anyway, let's get back to the real code here. So we have our interfaces here, and I'll show you a few other APIs in a minute. And that's how we get the connection from the testbed, is this REST Connector class. So what I have, because I want a job for pyATS, I have this job file that's very small and easy. And what it does is it abstracts a couple things for me. One, the loading of this testbed file and giving me the APIs available and the full power of pyATS. Jobs. I could send this to WebEx. I get the log reviewer. There's a lot of advantages to running pyATS jobs. And then my actual Python script, it takes care of loading that and abstracting that. So let's take a look at the script. And for now, it's pretty straightforward. I'm importing the 2.8 pyATS banner and AE test. I'm importing diff, and technically I'm not doing diffs, so I'm going to get rid of that. I don't need that. And then rich console, the rich console, and the rich tables. We need those. So what we're going to do is incorporate the rich tables console logging, the pyATS banner, and the AE test to run our tests. And then when we view our logs, we're going to have nice, colorful, rich tables. And I haven't played with them too much. I got it working and then started the stream. So what do we do? Well, there's always a common setup for pyATS, and then a common cleanup at the end. Cleanup, we disconnect from our devices. Common setup, two things happening. We testbed.connect, so connect to those APIs. And then we mark tests, our test cases, for loops. Because I want to run this test case against the multiple devices, dist router 1 and dist router 2. So I'm going to set up an AE test loop marking this test case, test interfaces class, and I'm going to flag each device name through the loop as testbed.devices. Now, the test. And this is going to look like a lot, but don't worry about it. It's really not too much. So first I'm going to flag self.device is the testbed device's device name. Remember this device name up here? So I'm setting that locally so that I can know if I'm on router 1 or router 2 locally significantly. Now I'm going to loop over the devices for testing, right? That's supposed to go there. Now, these are decorators as AE tests. So they will each get logged as a step in our log viewer, and they will give us a Boolean pass-fail if we want that. I can actually change this technically to a subsection or a setup, because I'm not really testing anything, but that's okay. So the first thing we're going to do is get the test yang data. So set up a variable equals self-device rest get the path to the API. So as of this line, this variable contains the raw output. We're going to get it as the .json as self.parsed.json. And then what I like to do is just write that out as a file. So we have a capture of the data that we've tested. And then I start testing it. So what I'm going to do here is, let's separate the rich table from the test. Okay, so forget some of this, we'll get to it. I'm setting up a threshold of 0 because I don't want any input discards. Okay, and where am I getting this data from? Well, I'll show you in a second. But the next thing I do is set up self-failed interfaces as a little empty dictionary. And that is my flag if this gets altered by any of the individual interfaces I test. If at the end of all of my testing this remains empty like this, then pass the series of tests. Otherwise, when I hit a failed test, when one of my interface's values is greater than this threshold, just write in some random data in here, failed test greater than 0. Then we evaluate this at the end, and if it says something, then mark this test as a failed test. Now, where do we do this? Again, ignore the table stuff for now. What we're going to do is, remember, we have the JSON. So let's look at the JSON. We have this JSON, and we have a list of interfaces. So we're going to say for interface in self-parse.json, open config interfaces, interface. So for each of these interfaces, right, evaluate their state Here's state, counters, input discards, right here. Evaluate that against our threshold. And if our counter is greater than our threshold, here I set a couple of things. I set the failed interface as that counter. Right here, self-failed interfaces. Remember my dummy flag? Well, I just set it as the counter. Right, it might be 5. Then I know it's failed. Else, I leave that alone. And when we exit this, I evaluate if self interfaces, right, if it actually has a value in it, then self.failed and say some interfaces have input discards. Otherwise, pass this test from pyATS, self.passed, and say no interfaces have input discards. Now, where does the rich come in? Let me quickly show you this. So rich lets you log the console and import tables. We define a table, calling the class table, giving it a title. We define our columns and give them styles if we want. And then we add rows. Finally, we set up console equals console, and we console print that table. So let me show you what I've done here, vis-a-vis the tables. So outside of my for loop, I set up my table as title, interface, input discards, and then I have columns, the device, dist router 01, the interface, GI1, the column is input discard counter, hopefully that's 0, and then a passed failed column. Now, if it fails, add a row that has the device alias, the interface, the counter, failed with a style of red for that row. Otherwise, add a row that says passed with a style of green. I have another one if it's NA. I don't know if maybe there is no counter or something. Just write it as on yellow with N not applicable. So that's what I've written so far. And you can see here, I have many other tests that hopefully we can get through some of them. But let's play with the styles of the table a little bit. I'm thinking for device, let's give it a style. So let's just make it cyan for the device here. And then for interface, I don't know, we'll just give it a different style, blue. Our counters, we'll make those, geez, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to use green or red or yellow. Is there a color palette? Is there a list of colors in here? Well, whatever. We can just do throw a color at me, somebody. Orange. And then pass failed. I will make that one green. And that's just the column header. Now let's run the tests. Okay, so let's run this. So what we say is, and I'm going to time this, pyATS run job, rich pyATS underscore job. Orange is not a valid color. Ha ha ha. Pink. Pink is not a color either. Magenta. There is a color reference, I should just be looking it up, but okay, there we go. And it didn't make any difference, those colors. But our color palette worked here. So this is good. So here's what's happening here from the start. We run our job, it connects to the devices here. You can see connect successfully. So the result is passed. The loop mark is passed and the common setup is passed. Now starting the test case for device router 1, we're going to get the data and that passed. We're going to create the pretest files and that passed. Then we're going to test input discards. And we can see here the passed reason. I'm not sure where this none comes from. I might have a print statement somewhere. Or, well, I'll have to see where, what is that, device.log.info? I'm printing the table. I'm not sure where that none is coming from. Well, that's strange. Anyhow, right, past reason. There's no interfaces with input discards. Now, if one had failed, right, if we did have a discard, ideally the whole row is going to be red, and that should be what happens. So then what I want to show you is why I'm doing this, partly, is if I do my pyATS logs view, check this out. I'm going to get that rich little table. Right, so you can see here, all my tests passed. My common setup connect to devices passed. My loop mark passed. Therefore, common setup passed. The test interface 1, my setup passed. My get yang data passed. My create file passed. But now here, oh, where's my table? I broke it. I broke it. There's that none. But I don't have the nice rich table in the logs, which is what I was really aiming for, was getting that colorful table into the logs. Now I'm doing log.info and then the console print table. I wonder if maybe I just console print table. Let's try that. That's a real shame. I know Tabluate works, my Tabluate tables work here. But why doesn't the rich render in the browser? And where is that none coming from? Okay, this one doesn't have any none anymore. This one doesn't have none anymore. Okay, so in my CLI logs they work. Now what about no, it doesn't log the rich table. Boo. Well, that's not a bad idea. Thank you. Oh, I'm not in the loop though. Yeah, I'm outside of the loop already. So it needs to be part of info log. can I just, where did I undo the, hang on. Can I info log and just print the table? Now I don't have any tables. This seems to be this is where I'm getting that none from. I think this line here is putting none in. How am I doing it with Tabluate? Log.info and then Tabluate. Yeah, there should be no reason why this doesn't work. It works with Tabluate. Console print table. Inside of log.info. Unless it's just because the browser just is not aware of the rich console. But I thought this would literally be that raw console output, including the, you see there's none again. So that log info can't do this console print table. So there's a bit of a trade-off here, right? We get this nice rich table here at runtime in the CLI, but there's no trace of it in the logs. I think that's a real shame. I'm at a loss here. I just don't know. I don't think that it's going to render those rich table logs in the log viewer, which is really what I was after ultimately. Yeah, I could compare the two. Console equals console. Well, I'm at a standstill here. I mean, I suppose I could include both. It's a bit more work. And you would get the plain text tabulate. But then I might as well just stay with the plain text tabulate. This might be something I could ask Will about, or maybe the pyATS team about. There's a couple of people I could ask about here, but none. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you have a question, go ahead. Yeah, Ruse. Yeah, Ruse. Please go ahead. Yeah, ask your question. Just wondering, maybe I should console print to a variable and then print that variable. Like, can I do something like this? Print me equals, and then print me. Does the username matter in the text field? I think your public handle matters, like your Twitter account and things like that. I think your username matters there. But no, I wouldn't say it matters. So I'm still getting that none. That's right, Rick, asking the real questions. I wasn't quite expecting that one, to be honest with you. No, it's still not going. Well, ladies and germs, I'm not sure here. I'm at a bit of a standstill. It looks great as a table, having the red and green, but that's what I wanted to bring into the HTML log viewer. And if I just console print that, it could be anything you want. It could be anything you want, your username. But when I go to the log viewer, I don't know what this, if that is any indication. Well, I mean, sometimes this happens. You try to go down a path and it doesn't work out. I'm not quite sure. Right, when I log info that, even though it clearly prints it to the screen still, the log info just says none. So log info is not aware of this console print output, even though I'm printing it as a console output from Rich. So, I mean, I could keep going and just keep doing more tests and leave it, but it's funny, I can't speak too much about Terraform, Rick. I haven't played too much about it with it. I've seen some pretty interesting implementations with ACI in particular. So, yeah, if you have a Yang model, right, because it's all modeled data with the Terraform API system. Well, this is unfortunate. I got it to work in a way, but I think I might stick with Tabluate. And if people ask me why am I going to stick with Tabluate, I can at least point to this code. So I mean, I am going to publish this code still as a, and let me get rid of, it's easier for me actually to get rid of all these other tests that are using Tabluate, because I got to rewrite them all anyway if I'm going to use rich tables. So let me just flush them out. Actually, what I should do, hang on. I should be smart about this. I don't know. Minimum richness, meaning like don't do any of these styles and see if I get it to write. That's why I was looking through my my logs actually to see if, but regardless of what the table looks like here, I'm getting none back from Python. So I don't know if it's the actual structure. I think it's truly that log info here. Yeah, I tried just printing table, but you have to invoke it from console for it to actually print. I can't just say print table. I have to console print table. Well, but that's what I'm not quite understanding is that when I say log info with something like my Tabluate code, it's happy to do the Tabluate table. Well, this is unfortunate because it really looks great at the console, but if it's not going to be part of the HTML logs, I don't know. I don't think that's worth the trade-off myself. I was hoping to have the best of both worlds and have the beautiful colored tables as output in my HTML render. Well, and like I was saying, what I would probably do is, like here's input errors. Maybe we could find one that gives us a red test. Right, so I think I would copy and paste this whole same thing and change input discard counter. Yeah, let's just do it. I'll just do it for the sake of doing it. And this is test for Right, so we're just replacing the API we're going to call. And instead of discard, this is input errors. And right, instead of input discard thresholds, let's make this errors thresholds. That's all we really should need to change here. So let's run the test and see if we have any. I'd like to see red mixed in with the green. I'd like to see some errors, to be honest with you. But everything passed. So now you can see there's no input errors and there's no input discards per device. Right, and that's what I would do is no, Rick, I think you're on the right path. That's right. I think that's where most people are trying to move towards, is immutable, infrastructure as code, using either Python, Terraform, Ansible, Python SDKs, you name it. Okay, so the next one here is frame check sequences. And I don't know, there's not going to be any errors on any of these interfaces. They're all, I would maybe need to point this at the open sandbox. I could try that. I could change my test bed and include the open sandbox. Let's do that. So just give me 1 second. I have that code somewhere else already. So let's try this. And I have frame check sequences. Oh, hang on, I gotta fix some of this. Input discards, input errors, FCS errors, FCS errors. I'm checking. Let's just reference our JSON here real quick. I overzealously overwrote the code. So we're in counters and we're looking at input FCS errors. Device input FCS errors counter, and this should be input errors counter, input discard counter. So the idea here, everyone, is that we can go through all of these, right? So I've already done discards and errors. We're going to do FCS next, but hopefully we can write tests for all of these open Yang model APIs, and then this code could universally be run against anybody's XE devices, possibly in XOS devices. We'll have to look at that next. Okay, so that's frame checks. Now let's try to run the code. We have a third device now. We may get some failures because I've added the open sandbox. No errors yet. Input unknown protocols is the next one. And I'll clean up this code a little bit. Now I know they'll all work, but I like to make things unique per test. So input discards, input errors. Right here, this should be input FCS errors, where I test it there. Input unknown protocols, have input unknown protocols, input unknown protocols. All right. Okay, thanks, Jim. I'm just reading Jim's message here about a handler and how the logs won't render console markup and logging by default. Markup equals true in the handler. Okay, I'll have to try that, Jim. Let me just finish this test here. Unknown protocols. It might be easier even for me to just get all my tests finished and then iterate over that. Logger handling in the docs. All right, thanks, Jim. I'll definitely do that. So everything is passing here. I don't know that I'm going to get a failure. Actually, I think I'll get a failure when I get into one of my more personal ones where I say if interfaces have descriptions or not. But, and what I would like to do is make sure I've got coverage. So that's input. Let's go to the JSON. And input CRC errors. I don't think I've done those yet. No. Okay, so I want those. And let's add those right up front here. Let's see if anybody's got any CRC errors. That's a little bit more common of an error. Oh, hang on. Okay, I see. which devices. Some of these devices don't have, or some of the actual interfaces don't have that key. Okay, so it's something new we can write to fix this CRC errors. So let's go back to our Python code. And I think I just need a test here. I'm saying if counter here. This should handle if counter. So let's do this, right? If there's counters in the counters. Let's try that. Where'd my terminal go? Ah. Why is it not testing for CRC errors? What am I doing wrong here? For all three devices. Gives it, so like, GI state counters input CRC errors. This table's not actually printing anything though. And it's passing the test. Why isn't it drawing the table? Oh, did I screw this up? See if the CRC error is working, and then we'll uncomment out the other tests. I'm not quite sure why is it just printing an empty table? And it didn't print any interfaces, did it? Where I said to print. Alright, so this one's a little different. I'm not sure why. If interface errors is in the interface counters, but so I'm not getting it right here. This is not evaluating as true, but it should be evaluating as true. When I look at the JSON, I have, an interface, state, like this one does not have CRC errors. But if I look for CRC errors, is it deeper? Is this inside of a different state? Maybe that's why. Maybe I'm picking up CRC errors. So it's not part of the regular counters. I found CRC errors somewhere else. So let me fix, let's finish CRC errors. But I need to figure out where I'm getting that from. Okay, so it's under this OpenIF state counters. So there's these state counters, which I believe I've already covered. So let's do CRC errors and then come back and finish the ones that are under these normal counters, just to get back on track. All right, so what I actually need here for CRC errors is the interface I don't need this if statement anymore. So the interface is the state, not the state. It is this. State counters input CRC errors. All right, let's try that. That should do it. All right, pay attention. Got to pay attention to the Yang model. No, key error, key error, key error. So maybe that doesn't exist under certain interfaces. So there's 6 of those. But there's 7 interfaces. So the loopback probably doesn't have it. That's correct. So I need to say if and then this open config Ethernet is in the interface, then do all the rest of this stuff. All right, getting closer. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, wonderful. Nobody has any CRC errors. But that also opens up the door for me to do all those other tests. Okay, so let's finish our normal tests. So under state, not this state though, forget that. So I have discards, yes. input discards, input errors, frame check sequence, and unknown protocols. So that takes care of all of input. So then output discards, output errors are the next two. And let me just go copy input errors and input discards. Input discards, input errors. Output, output discards, out discards, output, 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 Hey, there we go. We got an error. Check it out. We have a failed test. Output discards and output errors have failed on the open sandbox. If we go to our logs, it's pretty self-evident here that gigabit 1 has output errors and output discards. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. In the nice rich tables. Wonderful. So we have our first failure. That's good. And that takes care of our counters. Now let's do the rest of these open config state counters. So, because there's a few in here that we want to fail tests if we hit them. So we're going to copy our CRC error test from the top here. And instead of CRC errors, we're going to look for fragment frames. Input fragment frames. And this is going to say if okay, so then let's just copy this whole thing and keep writing them. So that's the input fragments. And Jabber will be next. Would you include pause frames and control frames? Oversized frames? as failed tests? That's a general poll. I'm asking the audience. Would you fail a test on an interface if it had control frames or pause frames? Probably oversized frames. I don't know about pause frames or control frames. Maybe pause frames because that's someone telling the link to slow down. So let's keep going with our tests here. And then at the end, we'll have a full set of tests against all of these different, and then we could even parse some show commands if you want. Actually, no, that would be more work. That would be a little bit different. All right, so Jabber, let's do pause frames. Some Mac pause frames. Oversized frames. And finally, output pause frames. Output pause frames. Output. Output Mac pause frames counter. Okay, and this is output Mac pause frames. Output Mac pause frames. All right, so that tests pretty much every counter. Let's say our counters under this OpenIF Ethernet state counters, and then under each interface state counters, where we're testing all of those things so far. All right, so let's save it and run it. And you should see, like, why we haven't been focusing on how fast this runs. A couple failed tests. Discards. Right, everything else looks good. But it's doing all of this testing and all of this in just, 11 seconds of real time or 3 seconds of user time with the reporting and everything. So then, beyond counters, I have a couple of other tests. And I'll leave this up to your discretion. I'm going to put them into this test just to show you the power of some of this. So I'm going to take one of my existing tests and copy it. And what we're going to call this one is test interface full duplex. and our duplex threshold is full. Sorry, I'm trying to do this. It would be here. Duplex mode. Duplex mode. Let's see what this looks like. Some interfaces are not full duplex, are not full duplex. So now we should be testing. Okay, hang on. Throwing errors. It didn't like that. Oh, that integer counter. I think it just needs to be counter. What line is that on? 452? I think this should just be counter. There we go. Well, why are they failing? Okay, this is good that I'm getting this yellow code and the NA on interfaces that don't have the duplex mode. But it's in reverse here. The mode is full. That should be passing the test. So is my logic inverted or something? Let's take a look at this. Okay, so I'm saying if counter equals negotiated duplex mode. So should I not say if counter does not equal duplex threshold, fail it, else pass it? I think that's better logic there. Because I bet you it says, if we look, there we go, that's better. Not all interfaces are full duplex, some interfaces are not full duplex. Wait, that should just say all interfaces are full duplex. Okay, all right, so that's the duplex test. Now we can even do descriptions if we want. Oh, let me get rid of this. Or opera status is another one we could do. Now for this one, I think I'm gonna try to reuse some of this code here. I don't need table data anymore. What I need is a table that says interface admin oper status. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. The device, the interface, the admin status, the oper status. Yeah, sorry, I'm lost in thought here. I went quiet. I'm just building out this test here. So this should be passed. I'll put caps lock on now. And this should be on green. And then display the data. And then should we pass or fail the test? And I need to do this here. Okay, let's take a look at what this looks like. This will be interesting. This is the admin status versus the oper status on interfaces. And that's good. Some of these are, right, like there we go. So the admin status on port channel 11 is up, but the oper status is lower layer down. So this failed the test. But everything else passed the test. Right, so we're starting to get a really good collection of tests against interfaces here with some great visual output. That I may come back to and see if I can sort out how to get the logs over to pyATS log viewer. Now what else do I have? Interface description, right? I don't know if in your environments if that's something you want to test for, but we can easily add that test. And see if the description, that would be the last test here. So let's go ahead and do it. We don't need table data, but I need the column headers here. So this table is interface has description. So we're going to have the device, the interface, the description, and whether or not it passed or failed. Okay, so we need our table row now. So this should actually be the past one. And we're going to have the passed on green, right? Else failed on red. Right, and then we display the log data. And then we pass or fail the test. Okay, let's try it. So now this is going to fail if the interfaces don't have a description. Oh, hang on, has no. Yeah, I kind of knew that was going to screw things up when I changed that. All right, let's see. There we go. So we can see the description. Now, hang on. What about the negative here? Intended description. Okay, hang on. So that's on my failed test. I don't do that anymore. I don't need that. Let's try that again. There we go. No. Key error, loopback 101. Self.errorCounter equals self-interfaces, self-interface name. So it doesn't like something I'm doing here with the failure of that. I don't think I even need this error counter. What I need to do is say failed. There we go. So now we have all these tests per device for input and output errors, full duplex, admin opera status, description. Takes just a few seconds to run, and we have all of this colorful output from Rich. Now, okay, this is a false positive. No, that's right. No, that's wrong. That's weird. It's weird because the description is there, but it says it failed the test. It says it doesn't have a description. I wonder why that is. Is it a duplicate? Is it because, no, because these are both network interface. I can't explain that. Let me try it again. Well, that's a little bit of a bug. I don't know why. Yeah, so if there's no description, it should be the only reason why we get failed. So I don't know why these two that actually have descriptions are failing. Doesn't make any sense. I'm saying if description is in config. Oh, hang on. How am I failing the test? No, because I should only be failing it. And this doesn't make much sense to me. I should only fail if there is no description. And this clearly has a description. Well, I'll have to live with it. I'm going to wrap things up for now. I'll push this to GitHub later and get some README documentation going, and maybe comb around the JSON for some more interfaces, things that we can test for. And I'll try to take away the homework to see why my rich console output isn't writing to the HTML log viewer. Some good stuff though today. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you soon. Thanks again.